Good evening, everybody. That seems awfully loud. For those who are joining us online tonight, good evening. Councillors, good to see you. Executive, good to see you. We are meeting in our chamber tonight, absolutely practising safe distancing, but getting together to conduct the business of council. If I could begin with a statement of acknowledgement. We acknowledge the traditional owners of this land in which we are meeting and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and to those from other communities who are with us today, for they hold the memories, the tradition and the culture of all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Item 3 on our agenda is apologies and requests for leave of absence. Do we have any? I was not aware of any. Item 4 is declarations under Acts, regulations, codes and local laws. Yep, CEO.
Madam Mayor, thank you. We do have one late item tonight, and with the agreement of council, it's proposed to introduce a late item of urgent business, that being the guidelines for a virtual council meeting. And if council is happy, that would be numbered in the agenda as item 10.7. So the recommendation that an item of urgent business, guidelines for a virtual council meeting, be included in the agenda as item 10.7. Thank you.
Thank you very much. CEO, can I have someone move that we accept that? Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Thank you, Councillor Watson. Does anyone need to speak against that? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. So we'll have item 10.7. Item 5 is declarations by councillors of any conflict. I think, Councillor Hall, you have one. Okay, Councillor Mildren, I'll go to Councillor Hall first.
Yes, I have a conflict of interest in item 8.10.
Madam Mayor, 8.10 as well. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. If you just give me a wave when we get to that point as well, as it will be the latter part of the evening. Item 6 is confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting. The recommendation is there on the bottom of page 3. Do I have someone move that for me? Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Does anyone wish to speak against those? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Item 7 is delegates' reports, of which there is none. Item 8.1 is our first item, and that's the council plan and budget items where councillors have a conflict of interest. I don't believe there's any conflicts of interest, of which means we don't need to put that recommendation. Thank you, councillors. Okay, item 8.2 is the council plan adjustment. Councillors, you've got a copy of that report, and it's a separate document. I'm just going to the recommendation. The recommendation for that is on page 8 of 19 of that additional thing. Yep, Councillor Lowe, that's the document that it's in. No, the one in your right hand. It's in there. Thank you. So council plan adjustment, page 8 of 19. I'm just going to give you a bit of time because we've got lots of extra bits of paper tonight. Is somebody happy to move that recommendation on page 8? Thanks, Councillor Bennett. Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Did you wish to speak to it, Councillor Bennett? Councillor Lowe. Did anybody else wish to speak to that item? No? So, councillors, I'll just summate, just for people at home to get a bit better understanding, is part of the delivery of a budget is also looking at the 4-year council plan that underpins all of the work that we do, and it was actually developed right at the very front end of this council term. So this is really about just making those small adjustments. You'll see within the recommendation exactly what that is in around things like 223 processes and etc. So, councillors, if no one wishes to speak against that, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried. Item 8.3 is the draft budget for 2020-2021. And councillors, the recommendation is there on page 14 of that same bit of paperwork that you have. You will also all have your draft budget. Looks like that will become available to the public post tonight should this draft budget be adopted out for public consultation. The recommendation is there on page 14. Do I have someone move that? Thanks, councillor Watson. Thanks, councillor Lowe. Councillor Watson.
Madam Mayor, this is our final budget under the current council term. So we've come through 4 years now of 4 budgets, and I believe this one, with the great work of Narelle, the team, us as a team, determining what is before us in the budget. There are a lot of good points in the budget. It's been a very difficult time in our community with COVID-19, so there will be some pain out there, but we're keeping the budget at a nil increase, which I think is a really positive thing for our community. And I'll probably most likely leave it at that, because the budget does go out for public consultation now from here on in.
Councillor Lowe, before I come to you, I do know that I think it's either the CEO or Narelle are going to do a really brief overview for us, but also for the people at home to hear as well. Councillors, are you happy if Narelle puts that for people to have a better understanding? Then I'll come back to you, Councillor Lowe, for comment, and to the rest of the councillors. Narelle, over to you. We'll hear your voice, but they won't see Narelle. Okay, Narelle, over to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a few points that I wanted to make. Firstly, Council is in a very strong financial position as it heads into the new financial year in what are very uncertain economic conditions. It is worth acknowledging that the 2019-2020 year has been very challenging following the summer bushfires and now with the COVID-19 pandemic. This budget has been prepared on a business as usual basis. For any continued periods of service shutdowns or restrictions into the 2020-21 year, budget variations will be put forward to reflect those changes as the year unfolds. The budget is prepared over many months, with the first iteration pulled together as the first COVID-19 case was detected in Australia. That first draft contained the state government announced 2% rate cap. As the pandemic evolved, Council responded initially with some quick-to-implement relief, including the deferral of the 4th rate instalment due date and late payment interest to 30th of June, whilst the budget was reworked to accommodate further relief. This budget tabled tonight contains a 0% rate rise to provide some relief to all of our ratepayers. I would like this opportunity to point out that the waste charges are aligned to the expected costs of providing waste services to the municipality, and the net increase in curbside and general waste charges combined is a 1.6% rise. Even though there is a small increase in the combined waste charges, the overall change for the average residential ratepayer for rates and waste charges is calculated to be a reduction of 0.08%. Council is budgeting for a full program of capital works totalling $23.5 million, which includes $7.7 million of capital grants. In addition, with the delays experienced in delivering services and projects since January this year, Council will also look to rebudget approximately $10 million of capital projects. It is considered extremely important that these projects continue to provide much needed stimulus to our local economy. The overall reduction in rates from 2% to 0 sees Council forego just over $800,000 of revenue in the 2021 financial year and in excess of $8 million over the 10-year financial plan. There has been an equivalent reduction in operating costs, which will impact on some services provided, such as reduced operating hours, and in particular in our events budget. We are anticipating, however, that there will be stimulus grants provided by the state and federal government, similar to bushfire funds, which will be able to supplement some of the reduction in the short term. Council's borrowings continue to be paid down, and there are no new borrowings anticipated in the 10-year long-term financial plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great summary. Councillor Lowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Was an excellent summary. Took away a lot of what I was about to say. So someone told me not to echo anyone's thoughts or words tonight, so I won't do that. But what I will say is this is the chance for our community to have an additional say. the budget comes about by us talking to our community and going out and having consultation with them, community forums, and information that each of us councillors receive as feedback from our community. And the councillors have worked with the executive staff and council staff to come up with this budget. It's not just an overnight project, it's making sure that we are all fiscally responsible for our ratepayers' money and how that's spent. Make sure we get good value for money, which I think we do. As Narelle said, that we're in challenging times, but one of those things is to make sure that we come out the other end all the time, at the other end, on the move and ready to continue to support our businesses, our ratepayers, and provide for our community. I'll identify one thing in our budget, which is Upstream. You know, us councillors had gone to the executive staff to say that we're supportive of this event and we would still like this event to go ahead, because we know that the benefits to our community are not only monetary but socially as well. But it hits the people that are hurting the hardest at the moment, and that's our moteliers, our restaurateurs, our cafe owners. You know, we've got sectors of our community that are doing quite well, but we've got other sectors of our community that are really hurting. So we wanted to make sure that we have an event that will target the right audience to help our community the most. And tourism is one of those sectors. Of late, I've been getting a lot of emails from the mountain bike community, and I know the other councillors have as well, just about what's happening within our park and stuff like that. And it's not a mountain bike park per se, but it's a place where our young and old and both male and female can go and ride and make usage of an area that they enjoy. And this is their opportunity. So we'll use those emails as their form of submissions to this draft budget to come up with any further ideas about how we can enhance and progress and accommodate what they're asking for. So I'll probably just, reach out to the community. This is your chance to have another say. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not going to say too much on the budget tonight. I might have more to say when it comes back for council for adoption. I will say though, I'm happy that we can deliver basically a zero rate rise in the 2020-2021 year. This is a budget that recognises the difficult times the community has and is going through in relation to the implications around the COVID-19 virus. The council was and is mindful of the hardships many are going through when we put this budget together. With this budget, we've given some in the way of a zero rate rise, but we have also made sure we can provide and deliver as well. Would I have liked the budget to offer a little bit more? Probably, but overall, I support the budget going forward out in the community for exhibition and consideration.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This budget, council keeping the rate rise to 0% is absolutely terrific, and it's what we should be doing in the circumstances we're in. Indeed, some might argue we should do it more frequently, but that's another debate for another day. I think there's a whole number of things that we may have been able to do differently. I honestly think the fiscal responsibility that's come out of this budget is something that we should be proud of, except that I think we probably could have reached the same level of fiscal responsibility by taking a different means to go about this. I hear and I understand that our hospitality industry is absolutely hurting, and I speak to a lot of them on a very regular basis, but I don't believe that tourism is going, in the circumstances of COVID-19 as it applies at the minute, I don't believe tourism is going to be their panacea, and it isn't going to bring them back to what they were before. My strong belief is we have to build a stronger local community or a local economy that's going to put people back into employment that can actually support those local hospitality businesses rather than rely on tourism. Tourism may well come back in a number of years' time, but in the medium term, we need to be able to keep those businesses going. And I think there may have been, and it's pointless to talk about anything that might have been specific examples, but there may have been other ways where we could have focused on projects that were more capital orientated, that create employment that is in the medium term more ongoing, and which then puts money back in the pockets of the local people that can go and spend some of that money at the local hospitality establishments. I think we could have done that with there's some nice to have things that we've had in the budget, and we've provided those things over the years, that they are nice to have and they're good to have, but under the circumstances we may well have been able to interchange some of the nice to have things with some of the more capital works projects that would have injected more money into the local economy. I applaud the council in the instance for the fiscal responsibility, but I just think we probably could have achieved a bit more in terms of this set of circumstances with COVID-19 than what we actually have. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, we have achieved a zero rate rise, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. But one of the most important things is that Wodonga Council has achieved it with a minimum of staff, and it's a budget that is extremely lean. And for the third year in a row, we've actually kept rates at either zero or a reduction. So, no, the last 3 years have been a major achievement with minimal staff, and we really aren't losing too many of the services that we're providing to the ratepayers and residents of Wodonga. So, a major achievement. Thank you.
Yeah, super quickly, because this is really just about this going out as draft and then all the feedback coming back to us. As per usual, all our budgets are a really intense process, and this year more than ever. It was certainly a time of looking at what we could bring forward that would play a role in economic stimulus for our community, but also social connection in a time where people just need it so desperately. I think that, yeah, like everyone is saying, this is an amazing job in a time where there are other councils in Victoria who have let go of so many staff. Lots of the things in terms of us making those savings were actually events that were coming up that, given the circumstances, we couldn't really run anyway. So our community isn't missing out too much. So I look forward to seeing all the feedback we get back.
Thank you. And before I go to Councillor Watson to close, I'm just going to give us a quick recap of the highlights of this. It is a 0% rate rise, but it does come at a cost. There's nearly $1 million cut to our operating budget, and it's not just this year, it's every year from now. So the cost of COVID to the council in terms of dollar terms is well over the $200,000 mark. But in saying that, we have looked and done every endeavour to pull costs back in as quickly as we could. The CEO and his team have worked fantastically in looking at redeploying staff, upping staff through our economic development team to work with our businesses from areas where they had less workload, etc. So CEO, to you and the staff, thank you for all the work that you've done and the nimbleness that we have been able to do to still fulfil the service requirements for our community. In this budget, we're still going to see $17.6 million of spend in our capital program. Our asset renewals is still having $5.8 million spent. That is incredibly important. But for the 8th year in a row, there is no new borrowings, and it's post this budget will be down to around $16 million, which is a great feat given the conditions that we have been working in and the extra stress and strain that it's been putting on the organisation to continue to deliver for our community. I think one of the things that stands out the most for me is just when we spend wisely. So we've been very targeted in this budget. So 87% of our spend on average continues to be spent in our community. So what we spend as a council stays here. So what Councillor Mildren was talking about is actually still being delivered. It's actually being done with the spend that we do, from capital projects right through to our service delivery. But at the same time, we do have a lot of our businesses hurting. How do we get people back here? I think we're going to see a large swing into the domestic market as people can't travel overseas, and people are going to look to reconnect to family, friends and locations. We have a real opportunity, so continuing our spend in things like Upstream is going to be really important. We heard Narelle talk about a carryover of around $10 million. That's a couple of really big items that were sitting in this budget that we haven't managed to get away this year, but we will get away next year. So they're things like the finishing off of the library, the gas gate pulled forward. So they're large items. So while it sounds like a lot of money, it's actually a couple of major projects that are now going to start. Well, they're either being delivered, like our library just out there, or they're going to be things like our gas gate, which we've been very successful in getting $2.6 million from the state government. You know, we're going to see continued development, starting of Barranduda Fields, a CBD bike hub for end-of-trip facilities, which is going to be really key as we see people move around our city differently. More solar lighting on our path network. We're going to see the car park to the regional cricket hub and the cricket hub open, and we're going to see a new cycle path down Huon Creek Road. So there's lots of other bits in there. There are a couple of the highlights, but there is absolutely plenty right across the piece, including right across our current sporting facilities. So while we are starting Barranduda Fields, it does not lessen the importance of our other sporting precincts, and we continue that spend. It's been millions and millions of dollars over the last couple of years. I looked at a list today, it's more than an A4 sheet that's been delivered in the last 4 years in terms of upgrading those facilities. So councillors, it has been a difficult budget to put together. There's still many unknowns out there, and there is still many unknowns that could come at us. So we do need to continue to reflect and review and be nimble where appropriate if things change in the near or in the future. Also, CEO, I'd just like to say, I guess back to the team, thank you for all the work. There's been a whole host of extra work that's had to be done around moving from a forecast 2% rate rise in line with the cap back to the zero, pulling out $1 million out of operational services, and it doesn't only affect this year, I'll say it again, it's every other year. So that's had to flow right through all of our budget process. But thank you to you and the team for doing that and for putting forward what I think is a incredibly strong, responsible, but a really important budget given where our economy is going to, I hope, restart, and also looking after our community and our businesses. Councillor Watson, did you have anything for close?
Thanks, Madam Mayor, and I appreciate everyone's input in their summary on the budget for 2021. But one thing which is totally different in this year compared to any other year that we've had a budget is actually getting the correspondence and the actual budget, because COVID-19, we have our library closed and things like that. And we've all learned some great new skills with COVID-19. We're Zooming at home and we're doing all sorts of things. But if you want a copy, please ring customer service or get onto the council webpage. It will be made available to you, but it's just one of those unusual years. And so please don't throw your hands up and saying we're not being transparent. Please ring council customer service or look on the website. It's there and it'll be available. So I hope Anthony Bunn from the Board of Mail, I hope the ABC ring Anna very early in the morning with things, and I hope our other media outlets are watching us tonight so that we do get a great story out there, because it's, once again, it's been a great budget to put down.
Thank you very much, Councillor Watson. I'm really hoping they don't ring too early. So what people are after is the Make Wodonga Yours website to put feedback, and the Pinpoint, which is an interactive mapping tool, and there is a online June community forum. So councillors, the recommendation has been put. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Okay. Okay, item 8.4 is the draft Albury Wodonga Smart Community Strategy, and I say Albury Wodonga, it's been done in conjunction with Albury. The recommendation is there on page 19, and councillors, we had the attachment in one of our large attachment files. Do I have someone move this, please? Thank you, Councillor Watson. Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Councillor Watson?
Oh, Madam Mayor, like that last motion we had with these changing times and COVID-19, I'm sorry to repeat myself, but this is an ideal strategy to go out to the community, because we are learning to live with IT and do different things. So there is a period of 28 days to go out. Albury City Council will be doing the same with their council at the next meeting, and then for adoption after that. So it is good reading. There's some great things out there with this new draft strategy of smart community.
Yeah, very timely that this come out now when we've all really, like literally every single person has been thrust into this digital transformation era that we're living in. So this has already gone out for some feedback with community and with lots of stakeholders. And by lots of stakeholders, I mean anyone who's anyone really has already been involved in this. The respondents told us, so I think there's 18 different themes, and we asked community to prioritise those ones. So they are in order: lighting, energy efficiency, Wi-Fi, buildings, energy savings, environment, real-time monitors and access to health and education. So by us doing this, this will mean we'll become, hopefully I get this right, the world's first cross-border regional smart community. Woo! So I'd encourage people to go through this and have a look. It's really exciting. I'll give you some examples of what's in this, but keep in mind this is only literally like a couple of a raft of heaps of different areas that we're looking at to do in conjunction with Albury. So one of them, electric fleet vehicles. So with the take-up of this, it's becoming much more, clearly it's a great environmental aspect to be doing this, but because of the big take-up of this, it's becoming much more affordable for organisations and councils to invest in this. Also looking at what this might look like for public transport. So basic, but having Wi-Fi on buses. I mean, everywhere overseas has it, and we seem to be a little bit behind, so some basic stuff like that. Another big one is health. We know, living in Albury Wodonga, we have pretty good access to things, but there still are gaps. And we have so many rural and smaller towns outlying us, and we know that people living in those areas, like rurality is a social determinant of health, and so having those community be able to access more equitable health opportunities will be a game changer for them. It will also help us in planning in terms of, say, when we look at our car parking strategies. We might have someone go out on a Friday and Saturday for a month and monitor what's going on, but he will be able to get real-time information about how people are actually using facilities. Another great thing in here is using tech to define an emissions goal and actually using that smart tech to monitor that, which will be really exciting, and things like looking at air quality, which coming out of the season we've just come out of would be really interesting. We've already in Wodonga invested in solar-powered LED lighting, but upping that and having that accessible to other areas like in playgrounds, in sporting clubs. So this is about, when I explain kind of digital transformation is how tech is involved in literally every facet of our lives, how we work, how we educate, how we connect with people. And this is about working smarter, not working harder, in terms of, we all know there's so many volunteers, so many community groups who are so thin on the ground. We've got everyone has to do more with less. So having this smart technology sit behind so many of our decisions will be really fantastic. It also means information will be much more accessible and transparent to our community as well.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I would only like to say that we're going to be putting this draft strategy out to Albury Wodonga over the next 28 days. We've got a lot of very intelligent people out there and organisations out there as well, and their feedback will be invaluable. The report that we've read is very comprehensive, but additional feedback will be wonderful as well. So More, better.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Broadly speaking, I think this strategy is a pretty good document, and it leads us into the future, into the things that we need to be looking at and doing for the most part. However, there's a number of things that I just throw questions out more than anything about how we're going to resource it. There's some things in there that I suspect are a bit of, will become in effect cost shifting from state and Commonwealth government responsibilities back to us. I mean, it's great to have really good publicly available systems, Wi-Fi, regional communication systems and so on, but somebody's got to pay for it, and if it's coming from the ratepayer's pocket, then all the stuff we've just been talking about budget and fiscal responsibility starts to get twisted up and turned into a few other knots. So we've got to worry about both the capital and the recurrent costs of those sorts of infrastructures, and I don't know that this report actually even goes close to looking at any of those. When I say most of the stuff that refers to the EPA issues, I think they're Commonwealth or state responsibilities. I know we've got certain agreements and interactive relationships with the EPA in Victoria at the present, but in terms of long-term monitoring and the things that are referenced in this document, there's a fairly hefty cost attached to that. And if it's not 100% permanently subsidised by the EPA, then the ratepayers again pay for it. I'm probably not totally taken back on the body cameras for council staff. I can see how local laws officers and rangers, it might be applicable, but I don't see it going any further than that. I guess the last thing is, we talk in the document about council having a role or undertaking an assessment and determination of renewable power infrastructure standards. Now, I don't think that we should be dabbling in that field. It's not our domain. We may well contribute when the state or federal government puts together renewal processes for the standards and so on, but for us to employ somebody with the qualifications and knowledge and experience to do that, I think is not the most appropriate way out. So there is some really, really good stuff in this strategy, and I don't want the strategy to be lost or distorted by the fact that there's some things in here that I think we need to have a really good, hard conversation about. And I'd encourage people in our community to make a response to this stuff and talk about those things and give us what their priorities are, because if the ratepayers are going to have to fund some of these things, then I would suggest at some point in time either the rates are going to have to go up or something else has to be dropped away. So we need to talk about those as issues. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to thank Imogen for putting this report together, and how lucky this whole strategy has come about because of the Two Cities, One Community initiative, and that's how we're going to get our world first. Councillor Bennett of having this draft community strategy come about. Smart cities are made up of smart people. And when you combine a lot of smart people together, you get a smart community. And that's what we have here in Albury Wodonga. As Councillor Mitchell said, we've got a lot of smart people out there that have already been touched. We've already gone out to them and asked for their opinion. We've talked to the universities and TAFEs. Well, not us, Imogen. Imogen's done this work, so I shouldn't. But on our behalf, she's gathered this data for us. But there's more out there that can be gathered. As far as resourced and that goes, I suppose that will fall out of this strategy on how we do that. Luckily, we've got a regional deal coming our way, so I'm sure we can tap into those funds and we not have to tap on the shoulders of our ratepayers. Also, a lot of this will be about private sector, what private sector can pick up, and we're just there in a support role. So we may not have to spend a cent, but get the value that private sector will bring to this. So I'm interested to see what the community says about this strategy. Thank you.
To whomever wants to pick this one up, so with that point around talking about the budget, so in the action plan with all the different actions, it says what is council's role. So some of it is support, some of it is own, some of it is facilitate. So going through that, the things that council is owning and that we'd be spending our budget on are things like bins, drinking fountains, walking tracks, fleet, stuff that we already are budgeting for. So I just wanted to clarify with that, concern about where things are coming from with the budget. Can someone give me some light on that one?
Well, in simple terms, when this paper was first written by Imogen, it came out as a 4-year strategy. And I think we all realise that it's a fantastic visionary document that needs to extend long beyond 4 years. And some of the deliverables won't happen for quite some time. So once we've got the strategy out there and we listen to some community feedback, the next stage would be for us to work with Albury and look at those areas where very often some of these measures will actually save us money. So when we talk about smart lighting and when we talk about smart buildings and smart parking and all of those things, these will be efficiencies and making us more effective as a council in Albury and Wodonga. So they'll be the ones that we'll do first, obviously. Some of the bigger, more challenging projects, as was already mentioned, we'll look to leverage either funding from the state or Commonwealth through the regional deal or potentially through stimulus funding via COVID, or look to the private sector to partner with us on a lot of these. So we're very conscious that some of these items will cost money. We'll do the ones that save us money first, and then we'll consult and we'll engage state and federal agencies to support us with the bigger ones.
Just before I go back to you, Councillor Watson, to close, I'd actually just like to thank the Albury Mayor and the Two Cities One Community Working Group, because they've been doing a lot of work in the background on this, and also sitting through many meetings as we kind of work through the process of getting these documents together. This is a very important strategy and absolutely part of our regional deal and that wider thinking. And I'm going to remind us all that it's actually a strategy, so I'd expect it to be very high level. And the one thing that we should all know by now, after sitting here for nearly 4 years, is that strategies don't necessarily have to cost money. They can also be things about advocacy, lobbying, and informing government policy at both state and federal level around local government and the requirements of communities and regional communities. So I don't think we should lose sight of the fact that not everything in this has to cost money. It's actually about that larger picture. And thank you, Councillor Lowe, for bringing up the notion of private sector being a part of this. Absolutely. And, when we do get smarter things like smart lighting, the lighting we put out there saved us 77% of our ongoing operational costs. So if we do it right and we do it well, our community will be much better for it. Councillor Watson, did you have anything to close?
Madam Mayor, thank you, and thank you for everyone's other input. And I think this, as Madam Mayor, you said, it is a strategy, and it most likely will be reviewed as technology changes and things like that. So it's not going to be a document just sits on the bookshelf. So it shows us the vision, it shows us partnerships, what we could make over the 4 years, but it also can bring together the schools, the TAFEs, our universities, businesses large and small. So, it's something that, we can feed and business and education can feed onto us. So I think it's going to be very good.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillors, the motion is there before us. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Item 8.5, volunteer policy update. Recommendation is there that the volunteer policy as included in the attachments be adopted. Can I have someone put the motion? Councillor Mildred, you're putting your hand up to move the motion? Yep. Councillor Lowe, Councillor Mildred.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think the policy speaks for itself, and let's not waste too much time and approve it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the policy does speak to itself, but one thing I would like to say about the policy is that the City of Wodonga cannot operate without volunteers, and I'd just like to thank them very much. And, you know, our volunteers would do it with a policy or without a policy, but we have the policy in place, so our volunteers are looked after as best we can, and I thank them very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to say that this week is actually Volunteer Week, and I would just like to, I've got my little happy hand on my hand, and I'd like to wave to the 280 volunteers that we have at Wodonga City Council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, absolutely. Councillors, I don't need to come back to you for any close. Councillor Mildren. Councillors, motion is before us. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried. Item 8.6 is the Two Cities, One Community Regional Natural Environment Strategy. It was a large, very large document. Do I have someone put that motion for me?
This is another document going out for consultation. So I must admit, I'm only 3/4 away reading this document. It is a very, very large document, so I will not sit here and say that I've read it all. So I'm going to be like the rest of the community and probably sit down over many, many cups of tea and read the rest of it. But what I can say is it's another collaboration between us and Albury City. It's another way that our community all value our natural environment and the way that we use it and don't use it. So I'd be interested in how the feedback that we get from our community on this strategy. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, the only question I've got is probably within the recommendation, the period of time. So I'd imagine it'll be about that 28-day time. So could I just have clarification from the CEO?
Yes, Councillor Watson, it will be a minimum of 4 weeks, and we'll align that with Albury, so both councils go out with the consultation at the same time for the same duration.
Thanks, thanks CEO, and thanks, Madam Mayor. That's all I need.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Lowe is quite correct. It's a massive document and it's got a huge array of complexities in it. And again, I've read it, but I can't say that I've absolutely absorbed the whole lot of it. The one thing that I will put out there, given that we're going out for community consultation, the one thing that became apparent to me, and that's probably because I've had some interactions with environmental stuff going all the way back to the early 1980s with the Albury Wodonga Development Corporation. There are some philosophical divergences that seem to come through in this document that move away from things that we accepted as givens in the past. I'm not saying they're right, wrong or indifferent, but I'm saying our community needs to be on top of some of those things and have a look through and just make sure that there aren't things in here that we've either consciously or unconsciously moved away from or changed or altered that is things that the community would like to hang on to. At this point in time, I'm reasonably open, in my opinion, about some of the things that I've picked up, but I do recognise they are changes in the way the community has in the past viewed some of our environmental values. So I just put it out there that if we can get people to look at the document with that in the back of their mind, that would be good. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. The statements made by a number of councillors tonight saying that they are slogging their way through this strategy. I agree, I concur. I'm slogging my way through it as well, and I firmly believe that 21 or 28 days is insufficient to evaluate such a vast document. I'd be looking at least 60 days. I think that, to be fair on everyone, 60 days would allow the right feedback to come back, would allow all of us to absorb what we're reading and to be able to value judge when we do bring it back to council. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm seeing nods from the CEO. What I'm going to take that as Councillor Mitchell is that we'll work with Albury around extending that time period. It may be shy of 60 days, but we'll make it make sense for our community to be able to give us feedback.
I'll just quickly talk about, this has already been a really big process so far. I'll talk about a bit of the consultation that's already happened and one of the key themes from there. So our community has said that they are a highly engaged and well-informed community who want to actively participate in the protection and management of our local environment to protect threatened species and natural assets. The environment and lifestyle are inextricably linked. And certainly when I went along to this feedback, a key thing that I heard was environment and health and how closely that is linked together, and a desire to demonstrate leadership in this area and for council to do that. So that's what we've heard so far. So let's go back out and test that again.
Thank you. It is an incredibly complex document, full of lots of data and scientific analysis. So it is pretty tough reading, but it is really comprehensive. And I think that given it overarches both cities and it's about long-term vision, not just 5 or 10 years, but longer than that. This is about, you know, our grandchildren's future of the environment, that it is important that it is so comprehensive and so overarching. It does overarch and encompass, I guess, those strategies that we already have in place. So things like our hills, our fire, our green space and the like. So it brings in those, but it actually sits right above those. Councillor Mildren, I look forward to when we get feedback from the community at whatever time frame that looks like for that discussion around any of those divergence that you have seen. I'll look forward to you putting those on the table so we can actually discuss those and I guess check them against the feedback that we get. I'll go to Councillor Lowe for close since you put the motion.
Sure. It's probably just important to mention that, as with any strategy, really, this is just a guiding document. So what you see in the document is not necessarily set in stone either. It's just to help decision makers now and in the future make good decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. 8.7, design and construction of basketball courts mechanical upgrade, HVAC, Wodonga Sports and Leisure Centre. Councillor Watson, are you happy to move that? Thank you. A second, thanks, Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Watson, anything to say?
Try and be very quick, Madam Mayor. This is one of our great assets through our city with many other assets, and we're just basically doing repairs, maintenance, but in this case, replacement. I'm sure my friends at the Country Cup on January, when they come, they will be very grateful that they have some cool air or warm air if it's a cold time. But, you know, it's just one of these things that to replace the leisure centre would be an amazing cost. So this is quite a good spend of money to keep it going further on. So we should always keep in tune with our assets to keep them renewed, reviewed and updated.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not only is it going to save us money by doing this over a period of time, but it's also essential maintenance. It has to be done. I was involved with the opening and the closing of the National Junior Basketball Championships recently, and you know, the buzzword was, we hope the air conditioning holds out. These people bring $3 million a year into the community, and there are lots of other things where that centre is used. So it's basically essential maintenance.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against this? Otherwise, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried. Item 8.8 is the Domestic Management Plan 2017 to 2021 Mid-Cycle Review Feedback Report. I know we have an alternate motion. Councillor Bennett, we all have a copy of that with another additional point, so it makes it 3 points. Councillor Bennett, you want to put this motion? Yep. So councillors, you've all got a copy of it on a single sheet of paper. I'm just making sure you've all got it. You want to give me a nod? You've got it in front of you. Thank you. Can I have a seconder? Does Councillor Bennett have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Bennett.
Do you want me to read it out, or we can just take that as read? Just the additional one. Okay, so 2, officers provide a further report to the August 2020 council meeting on making Wodonga an on-leash only municipal area with provisions for specific nominated public areas where off-leash activities may be permitted, with the report to incorporate further community engagement using appropriate survey and engagement tools. And I think this is, we've already got, this is what's in there, isn't it? Yep. So that's what I'm adding. Yes. So interesting. At the moment, so many crazy things happening, but a good thing that's happening is more people are out and about walking, which is fantastic. An unintended consequence of that one is there's been some interesting behaviour. I guess it's really the humans. It's them. So there's been some irresponsible pet ownership that has been brought to our attention, and it's certainly led to a lot of conversations that I have had for many years with people in terms of the confusion. And even actually as a group, when we discussed this, there was confusion about Wodonga being predominantly on-leash versus off-leash. So at the moment, it is predominantly off-leash, with some specific areas where you have to have your dog on the lead. But looking at this would be council officers investigating what it would look like to be predominantly on leash. And it is really important that we still have those areas where people can go and let their dogs off the leash. But then this would enable people to have the knowledge that the place they were going to, all the dogs were going to be off the lead. We all know there's that power imbalance when you've got your dog on the lead and someone else comes along and their dog's not on the lead. So this would hopefully alleviate that. Like anything, this won't be, this is just draft, this is just thinking at the moment. So we'll go ahead and, if this gets up, look at ways to implement that. And how much time do I have? Because there's so much I could say. Okay. So a couple of the other things that came up, we put a survey out a little while ago and had like 400 and something responses, which is really good. In that feedback, we received that people were supportive of a 24-hour cat curfew. At the moment, it is 7 p.m. to 7 a.m, so looking at what that might look like. Bringing back events like Paws in the Park, which is around supporting and encouraging responsible pet ownership. Also looking at pet registration. So when you get your rates, you get a little pie chart with where your rates are all going towards. So within this feedback, it certainly came up that people were a little bit confused about where their pet registration was going. So having some information available on our website about making that really clear so people know that. And I don't know how many times I've had this conversation with people about going, well, how come we pay pet registration but the pound's in Albury? So with Albury and Wodonga Council doing shared things together, that means inevitably that we're both going to be putting in for things, particularly with infrastructure projects like the regional cricket hub. Albury is putting in for an infrastructure building that's going to be in Wodonga. Same things for us. We've got to put in money, but the infrastructure, the actual building is going to be in Albury. So another thing that has come up, this is my last one, is I know there's confusion around in New South Wales, you can do a once-off pet registration, whereas in Victoria that's yearly, and that's actually above us, that's state government mandated. So if people, and I have certainly heard from people who don't support that, I'd really encourage you to get in contact with Bill Tilley and Tim Quilty, our state reps here in Wodonga, and let them know that you're not happy about that.
Madam Mayor, Councillor Bennett has covered the cat curfew thing with me, but the beauty about it going back for more information is we could have more data as a council to discuss this at a later time. So one of the stats that came back from the surveys was of those who have cats, 67% would be happy to have a cat curfew. So getting that more data and having some ways to go forward would be very good.
Look, this is a mid-cycle review report done by council, so we're going to have a bit of a look at it and then further investigate. It says 5 themes are included: cat curfew, the dog park, the pause in the park, introduction of discounted registration, covered some of those, the dangerous dog ban. I think we do need a more thorough investigation in regard to the cat curfew. I'm happy that our dog park will finally get built this year. It's in this year's budget. It was in last year's, but there was some, once investigated, it needed more money to be built, and also a thorough investigation as to where it will go. So I look forward to this eventually getting built, and for the report to, more investigated report to come back to council so we can discuss it further.
Sorry, just before you go on, I just had the governance officer bring to my attention that in that proposed motion that Councillor Bennett's put, item 1 is actually shortened from the original item on page 44. So it actually stops that the report be received and noted, and the and noted and that changes to the domestic animals is actually out. So, Councillor Bennett, that was your intent. Second, are you happy with that? So, councillors, just so you're aware, we all had it in front of us, but I think it was just worthy of note, particularly those people watching at home, because they don't have a copy of that. So the item 1 stands, but it's actually edited and stops that report be received. The second item that Councillor Bennett read out before has been added, and item 2 on page 44 becomes item 3, and it's there in its entirety. Yep, thank you. Now, does anybody wish to speak against it? No? Because otherwise, councillors, I'm going to keep us moving because I'm conscious unless it's absolutely burning, I'm going to move us. Yep, okay, right, last one. Councillor Mildren, keep it quick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to put it on the record. I'd prefer if we were including a review of the cat curfew, because we've had a significant percentage of our respondents say that that's something that they want to see achieved, and I think it stands in equal importance with the on-leash issues with dogs. Cats, environmentally, cats are really cause a lot of dangerous outcomes and loss of wildlife in our urban environment and in the hinterlands around our urban environment. And I think it's important we really seriously focus on it. I would have liked to perhaps ask the mover and seconder if you could include the cat curfew in the report that comes back in August. I suspect the answer will be we don't have time to do it. But nonetheless, I'd like to see that sort of stuff happening. I'm not going to oppose this motion on that basis, but that's where I want it seen to that effect. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Alternate motion put. So, councillors, I am going to, Councillor Bennett, I am going to come back to you if you have any close. Councillors, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Item 8.9 is the Lawrence Street Bridge proposed bridge replacement project. Recommendation is there on page 55. It's a large recommendation. Do I have someone move this report? Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Thank you, Councillor. Hands got up everywhere. Councillor Watson, I think, went first. It was a quick draw. Councillor Lowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is in regards to the replacement of the bridge in Lawrence Street, which will effectively, if this proposal gets up tonight, will allow an underpass to be put under the bridge at Lawrence Street, which will allow not only our kids to transition from one side to the other, which will take out the need for a crossing to be in the area near the Scout Hall there, but it will also give our community the ability to run from one side of the city to the other without crossing a major road, which will also help our and what's our run in the park called? Park run? Very technical name. It'll save the turnaround point. Yes, very fast too. But it'll give community runs and things like that the ability to run safely, where it'll save on road management costs and things like that. We could go on forever and a day. It's similar to the air conditioners and heating service at the leisure centre. We could continue on a maintenance program after maintenance program after maintenance program and drip feed money year in, year out. But sometimes you just got to look at something and go, the most effective way to deal with it is actually to pull it down, replace it, and go again. And I thank the Lawrence Street Bridge. It served us very well, but I look forward to having a new bridge in the future. Thank you.
We'll make sure you get a bit of that concrete and then pull it down. All right, Councillor Lowe. Councillor Watson. Does anybody else wish to speak to this? No? It is a very large spend. You are correct, Councillor Lowe. It is expensive, but isn't that what councils are supposed to do? Roads, rates and rubbish? Well, this is part of the road. And I think you're picking up that we actually are building in an improvement into it as well, I think is a pretty important thing. So that being said, with nobody speaking against it, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried. Councillor Hall, is this the one you have a conflict on? And Councillor Mildred has a conflict. Councillor Hall, will you read your conflict out and then I'll go to...
Yes, I have a conflict of interest. It's indirect interest because my daughter owns a property in Whenby Grange.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a little bit different and a little bit difficult, and I've looked at this in two ways, and I've taken officer advice in respect to this matter. But if it were under the new Act, I would definitely and quite clearly have a general conflict. And in terms of the old Act, it's an indirect conflict based on my previous withdrawal or expression of conflict with the Kinchington matter, which refers to an almost identical Section 173 agreement. If I were to speak to this matter in a manner differently, it would lead to my position where it could be alleged, either perception-wise or otherwise, that I have a conflict or I'm trying to express an outcome to influence the other matter. So on the bounds of caution, and the caution principle is what council's lawyers say we should be doing in relation to conflicts, I felt that I have to withdraw myself from this matter. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm not quite sure I understood all that, but it's your call because it's your conflict. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. There is a recommendation for this on page 62 of 123. Do I have someone put that as a motion? Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Councillor Lowe, any commentary? No commentary, Councillor Bennett?
Look, no, this is an old Section 173 agreement that was entered in 2009 and things have changed since then, so it's no longer relevant and needs to be amended. Full stop.
Does anybody else need to speak to it? No, councillors, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried. Thank you. Item 9.1 is the Upstream Festival of Art and Culture. We spoke about it earlier this evening. I'm just going to find the green tab. Okay, there is a recommendation on page 75 to receive and note this report. Do I have someone move it? Thanks, Councillor Bennett. Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Bennett. No comments. Councillor Mitchell.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just to say that Upstream is a very, very exciting event for Albury Wodonga. It's something that's going to build into something even more exciting, and we're going to stamp the Albury Wodonga name on it. It will be something that will attract people from all over Australia and overseas. So yeah, I'm excited to see it continuing, and I look forward to great things.
Yeah, I too am looking forward to see how this event, what it morphs into. I think it was off to a good start, and definitely the word is starting to get out there. And, you know, we hear a lot in the community how we always support our sporting teams and we're sport orientated and stuff like that. And I think this event just shows that we're equally as interested in our arts community and supporting them as well. So, and it'll have a double spin-off this next year with all the people that it'll attract. It'll be more important to, as we touched on earlier, our moteliers and our hospitality industry and our people that benefit from our tourism in general. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As a joint venture between Albury City and Wodonga City, this is probably one of the most exciting opportunities and events and things that we could be running. And I say opportunities because what we've seen to date is probably not even scratching the surface of what it can potentially morph into long term. These sorts of things done sharply and well can lead to all sorts of economic spin-offs over time. I do have some reservations as to how this might work if we're still stuck in COVID-19 circumstances, however slight. And I'm also a bit concerned that we might not see the tourism rebound, as I mentioned a little bit earlier. The tourism rebound is, people are going to be a bit reticent to get out and about quickly. It's going to take time. So this year, maybe there's some things about this that we may have to look at or whatever. But just as a matter of interest and an indicator of, in the first year that this has happened, we've had an estimated 1.5 million injection into the local economy, and we've had estimated attendance both with local and regional and then non-local or regional attendees. We've had around about 16,000 or 16 to 17,000 people participate. And if you do some really raw numbers, based on the fact that Wodonga City's expenditure and Albury City's expenditure combined, if you divide those numbers out, it's about, after the first year, which is unusual, it's about a $66 per attendee profit margin or economic return. Profit probably isn't the right word, but economic return. It looks at about $23, $24 per person to put the event on that attended, and about a $66 return. So if you look at it in those ways, it's got an absolutely unbelievable future. I'm just not concerned. I'm not convinced that we will get a good return this year based on our COVID-19. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Madam Mayor, this is just the second year of a 3-year project or trial project with the Upstream Festival and Art and Culture. But it's just a fantastic thing that it brings also our volunteers of both cities together. So once again, we were thanking the volunteers today, but this event doesn't work without the volunteers as well. So apart from our expenditure, it's also what our community do to it.
Councillors, just before we close, again, I'd like to thank Albury who partner with us in this. I'm looking forward to, even with the impacts of COVID, with the new domestic market, what we're going to see turned on, what might happen to this event. I do know that we've had discussions in the last couple of weeks, and Councillor Mildred, you might have missed them not being at the briefings, that they were around the review that we'll be undertaking through September, October to scenario plan and call whether this event goes on, whether we have to make changes to adapt to any of the different impacts that we might see that we don't know now. So the team are absolutely all over this and working hand in hand with Albury on that. The only thing I've got to say about this report is I actually don't think the figures about the attendance are right. I think I went to nearly every event, and I got to say that those figures, particularly on page 63, look really light. You know, things like even the small sculpture exhibition, you couldn't get in there at any point, and I was there for around about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and it was full of, you know, people moving through there. So I kind of look at those numbers and think they're probably a little light. Okay to underestimate them, but we also need to make sure that we cater to the numbers that may come forward in the future, because sometimes there's nothing worse than going to an event and there's not either enough food there, enough toilets, enough room, enough whatever. And if we undercater because we've undercooked the numbers, then that's not going to be helpful. Councillors, back to Councillor Bennett. Councillor Bennett, thank you. He put the motion. And okay, councillors, let's put that motion. All those in favour, thank you. Motion is carried. I'll have to do one of those joint names. Item 10.1 is the finance report for April. Councillors, it is for information only. Is there any questions? No. Going to keep us moving. The planning report on page 89 for information only. I'm going to keep us moving through these unless there is any questions. 10.3 is the building report. Councillor Watson, did you want to highlight those pool things where you've got to register your pool? The numbers there on page 91. If you haven't registered your pool yet, you need to do so.
Madam Mayor, I actually have registered my pool now, and I would recommend all our ratepayers who has a pool out there to please register.
Thank you. There is one worthy of note that we do get a lot of questions on, councillors, there on the top of page 90, and that the shed company is looking like they've got a permit in and going to spend some money down on that corner. Item 10.4, competitive services report. Very exciting. Lots of new toilets going ahead. Public toilets. It's an exciting thing. 10.5, assemblies of councillors. Again, for information only. 10.6, decisions register. Yeah, go for it.
Just for the minutes, on page 108, we talk about the resolution of the Wodonga Hill strategy, and there isn't a status update in that one. So just for the minutes, could we have that detail included, please?
Okay, it brings us to the piece of urgent business tonight, 10.7, which is the guidelines for virtual council meetings. Thank you, CEO and team, Kelly et al. And also Kevin, for putting these together. We've been pretty fortunate that we've managed to continue to hold council meetings right across the state. People haven't, for all sorts of reasons. So having a guideline on which to work by and have some clarity around is important. And CEO, thank you for making this available so that our community actually understands what may or may not take place should we need to enact that. I'm just looking, it is for information only. Was there any further comment from anybody that we needed to put? We always live in hope that we don't have to enact any of those, but it's important that our community understands what we're doing should we need to. Item 11 is notices of motion, of which there are none. Petitions, there are none. Council seal, there is none. There is no further urgent business. And that leaves me to close the public meeting. We have one item to deal with in confidential business. So we will be switching off our live stream right now, but we will be returning to say goodbye. Thank you. make the clicks as is appropriate. Thank you. Councillors, it leaves us, we have returned to our open council meeting. We need to adopt the recommendations that were, or the motions that were put in the closed meeting. Can I have someone move that they be adopted? Thank you, Councillor Mildred. Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Anybody wish to speak against that? All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried, and that does leave me to close tonight's meeting and look forward to seeing you all on the 29th of June. In between times, I'll just remind people we do have the online community forum on the 1st of June. Please jump on our website if you want some details of how you could participate in that. Councillors, that should be a fun night for all of us to be able to get our heads around too. Now we're all tech savvy. And again, councillors, thank you for all your work as we keep meeting online as well and continue the business of council. Thank you, staff. Thank you, councillors.